Okay, so I'm here today to present an overview of the potential public health benefits of cultured meat and the barriers that impede achievement of these benefits. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and honor that I live and work on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I completed my practicum this winter in Health Canada's novel food section, which ensures the safety of novel foods before they can be sold in Canada. You may wonder, what is a novel food? Oh, pardon me. Back we go. Okay, you may wonder, what is a novel food? The simplest explanation is that a novel food is one that doesn't have a history of safe use as a food, has had a new process applied to it that causes a major change, or has been genetically modified to alter its characteristics. Part of my work during the practicum was conducting environmental scanning about cellular agriculture, and one product of cellular agriculture is cultured meat. For my culminating project, I conducted a rapid review with the goal of identifying what, if any, public health benefits are anticipated for cultured meat, and if any challenges to achieving those benefits are known. Throughout this presentation, I will discuss the public health implications of our current meat consumption, as well as the potential implications of switching to cultured meat. Before I continue, I should note that there are a variety of names for cultured meat. The term cultured meat is often used in the literature, and so I use this term throughout the presentation. In 1931, Winston Churchill said, "50 years hence, we shall escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken in order to eat the breast or the wing by growing these parts separately under a suitable medium." While we weren't quite there in the 1980s, between 1971 and the end of the 20th century, there were a number of steps that paved the way for the first cultured meat sample in 2002. After that, the first public tasting of a cultured meat burger in 2013, and in 2020, Singapore approved cultured chicken for sale. I would like to take you through a very simplified overview of the process. Cultured meat is meat grown in vitro from cells harvested from donor animals, which are then isolated and banked in a culturing system along with media containing growth factors and nutrients. Both a dynamic and static system are shown here. After cells have differentiated and tissues have grown, they are harvested and processed into cultured meat products. This is a brief overview of the methodology for my review. I will highlight that while I did not restrict results by date, there is an increasing amount of literature published in recent years, and a total of 98 documents were included in the review. The literature identified potential benefits in 6 key areas. First, the environment. Compared to conventional meat, which has a host of negative environmental effects discussed in the literature, cultured meat could reduce land use, water use, and produce less greenhouse gases and air pollution. It's also estimated to have a lower carbon footprint. However, it's not more energy efficient than all types of meat, and there are also varying viewpoints about how it will impact plant and animal biodiversity. Second, nutrition. Studies have linked meat consumption to several chronic conditions, and some researchers recommend reducing meat intake. For people unwilling to do that, cultured meat is an alternative because its nutrients can be finely tuned, for example, to increase vitamin levels or to alter the ratio of fatty acids. Third, food safety. Contamination in conventional meat causes an estimated millions of cases of foodborne illness and hundreds of thousands of deaths each year. In contrast, the research suggests cultured meat would reduce these risks because it reduces or removes the need for animal transport and slaughter, and in theory can be conducted in sterile conditions. Fourth, food security. Some 700 to 800 million people globally were undernourished in 2020. The Food and Agriculture Organization has called for actions such as ensuring inclusiveness in food security interventions. Cultured meat can be produced faster and more efficiently than conventional meat, and it could play a part in responding to global hunger. Researchers recognize, however, that solutions must address both the volume of food produced as well as its distribution. Fifth, zoonotic disease. The literature indicates that 60 to 75% of recent pathogens are zoonotic in nature and in origin rather, and that intensive animal agriculture is associated with the emergence of diseases and their spread. One course of actions researchers suggest is developing alternative meat sources like cultured meat, which could reduce the risk by strictly controlling meat production, lowering the contact between humans and animals, and providing another way to get exotic or rare meats. Last, antibiotic resistance, which is a well-recognized public health risk and one that the literature notes causes millions of infections and tens of thousands of deaths annually in the US alone. More than half of antibiotics used are used in food production. Cultured meat potentially reduces risk because, again, it can be produced in sterile conditions without antibiotics. However, some have noted that sterile conditions are expensive to maintain, and food-grade antibiotics may be a more affordable option at scale. Next, key challenges. First, the technology. The research demonstrates that it's costly, and that's mainly because of the media that's used for culturing. There's also a question about how well it compares to conventional meat. While it's biologically equivalent, it may not have the same ratio of muscle, fat, and connective tissue, and there are some texture differences. Also, there are physiological limitations, like ensuring cells have enough nutrients in the absence of blood flow, and developing constructs such as scaffolds that enable more complex tissue structures to be developed. Consumer acceptance is the second large challenge to overcome. As noted in the research, to achieve benefits, people have to substitute their existing meat intake with cultured meat. But there are concerns, including fear of the unknown with respect to the meat or the technology, perceptions that products are unnatural, and safety concerns. There's also some heterogeneity in how consumers respond to cultured meat, which I will touch on in the next slide. Three key implications have been identified for public health practice. First, communications to raise awareness, since many people are currently unaware of cultured meat, to discuss and link the benefits, which tend to be global, and the risks, which are mostly individual, to address the concerns of different groups by providing transparency and fostering discussions, for example, about naturalness, to facilitate dialogue and support informed decisions, and to provide evidence-based information that targets some of the underlying fears and worldviews that can fuel resistance. Equity is another implication. The literature notes that a lot of the current discourse doesn't consider equity or question how cultured meat can either reinforce or worsen existing inequalities in food systems. One way to address this is research that explicitly questions power in food systems, examines the potential effects on inequalities, and demonstrates that affordability and equity are not incompatible. Another way is advocacy for accessibility now and as the technology develops further, and measures that ensure that agricultural workers and countries that rely more heavily on conventional meat, on the conventional meat sector, are not left behind in this transition. The third implication is regulatory oversight. The literature notes that information is not enough to shift consumer attitudes. As well, one study found that there's low willingness to accept the same health risks as conventional meat in cultured meat. This supports the need for oversight that ensures safety of these products, to promote trust, and to address the fear of the unknown. Currently, only 6 countries around the world have confirmed how they will regulate cultured meat. The next steps are to continue the research to understand the factors that affect behaviors and attitudes, and to use this information to inform communications that target those factors. Also, to increase awareness of cultured meat in a way that relies on evidence and not suspicions. There are a number of limitations that I want to highlight. As this was a rapid and not systematic review, the results presented here are not comprehensive. There's also a lot of uncertainty around the technology, so estimates are subject to change. The acceptance studies so far are referring to hypothetical products, and consumer behavior may actually differ once the products are released. With respect to the representativeness of the acceptance studies, most of them use some form of convenience sampling, which limits their generalizability. There are also some gaps in the literature. For example, not many studies compare cultured meat to other meat alternatives. This is important because plant-based meat is already available, and other meat alternatives may be available at the same time as cultured meat. There's also not much discussion of other threats to food safety. If I could conclude with a few points, those would be that benefits are anticipated in several domains, but accurate estimates are limited because cultured meat and cellular agriculture continue to evolve. Also, some challenges are known and possible mitigation strategies are being identified for those challenges. There is a real opportunity here because the field is still fairly new for public health practitioners to intervene and to advance public health interests. Last, I want to express my gratitude to a few people without whom my practicum in this project would not have been possible. My family for their support and encouragement, Dr. Jaime Arredondo Sanchez Lira, Dr. Kathy Worthington, Dr. Jeff Masuda as my second reader, Heather Ulmer, other PHSP faculty and staff, and at Health Canada, Susan Sinclair, Neil Strand, and Jennifer Holtzman. And to all of you, thank you for your time.